This is Rachel Hill for the African American Cultural Gardens Sankofa web series. And in this series, we're going to bring to you some of the most fantastic people in Cleveland who are changing lives, making impacts. One of the things that we also discuss with them is what does Black history and culture mean to them, because that's very important. If we don't know where we came from, we don't know where we're going. And we also talk to them about what do they love about the garden as well. So these are wonderful conversations that we think you should sit down and watch, and you can learn and grow and be inspired, because a garden belongs to all of us and it is so important. But also you need to know about what people in the community are doing to better the community, because we all know that we have better days ahead. Please make sure you stay tuned for all of the episodes in the web series of the Sankofa web series, brought to you by the African American Cultural Gardens.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won.
This is Rachel Hill with the Association of African American Cultural Gardens Sankofa web series, and I am here today with Miss Regennia Williams of the Western Reserve Historical Society, and we are going to have some great conversation as we normally do and tell you a little bit about the garden and all things Cleveland. So Regennia, thank you so much for being here today. How are you today?
I am fine, Rachel. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Can you tell our audience a little bit about your role with the Western Reserve Historical Society?
Sure. My official title is Distinguished Scholar of African American History and Culture. So in addition to planning lots of wonderful programs, we really want to engage those members of the academic community, those folks who tend to identify with our library and the research materials here, and to be that scholar that produces something incredible, adds something new, we like to say, to the existing body of knowledge, and uses our archives to do that. So that's why I get excited and start gesturing like I'm doing now when we talk about the role of the scholars. And just like in the academy, for example, like Cleveland State University, where I worked for 23 years, there's three main things that we like to focus on as scholars. So teaching, it's certainly one important part of what we do, more so through individual public programs than lecture. Sometimes we have discussions, but not too many lectures, and certainly no grading of final exams. But teaching through the public programs is something that I have the opportunity to do. And then also, as I said before, the scholarly engagement, taking in a few conferences and workshops, professional development, and then sharing those research activities that we're engaged in, either as works in progress or published books. We really like that, when we get a book published with our name on the cover. And then also to be of some service to the surrounding community and volunteer with other organizations outside the museum. And certainly I have the pleasure of working with the African American Archives Auxiliary here at the Western Reserve Historical Society. So that's pretty much what I do.
Okay. And you mentioned history, you're a historian, and you mentioned that you were at Cleveland State for 23 years. Can you talk a little bit more about your background and how this path came to be to where you at now? Are you originally from Cleveland?
Oh yes,
Okay.
I'm a native Clevelander, and I'm not going to tell you when I was born, but I've been around for a while. What if I say I'm a boomer, like Oprah, right? Me, Oprah, Spike Lee, we're all boomers, right? But not yet retirement age.
Okay.
So I'm still at it. You know, this isn't a second career. This is a different way to teach, in a different way, a different environment in which to be a scholar. So I'm loving it. But I am a native Clevelander, as I said. I attended Cleveland Public Schools for 10 years, kindergarten through 9th grade. And then for high school, I went to Hawken Upper School in Gates Mills, Ohio. That was a different experience growing up inner city. Some people may say ghetto, you know, but certainly working class, wonderfully loving Black community in the lower end of Kinsman, officially Garden Valley. But we had a little house on 78th Street there where my parents and their 6 children had big fun, you know, especially on Sunday when we all got together and went to the Baptist church that my parents were charter members of and officially co-founders of. So that was an interesting way to grow up. And then because I was engaged to be married at 17, I just decided to stay right here in Cleveland and went to Cleveland State University. I sometimes tell people I grew up on that campus, but I went there in the fall of 1977. Again, I'm a boomer, so you know I came in tail end of the 50s, right? That's when I made my entrance into the world. But Cleveland State was very good to me. I had several full-time jobs there. It's part of the classified staff, but also taking classes along the way. So ended up with a bachelor's degree in urban studies and then a master's degree in public administration. Then I went up the street to Case Western Reserve University for the coursework toward the PhD in history. And once I completed that, I went back to Cleveland State and started teaching in the history department in 1993 as ABD, everything except the dissertation done, and took my time about finishing up the research. But once I completed the dissertation, I was invited to apply for a tenure track position. You know, after I had taught part-time, lecturer, a visiting instructor, just about every status that you could have other than being tenure track or tenure. Then in 2001, I believe, I applied for the first tenure track position, and I eventually earned tenure, and I was promoted to associate professor. So when I say that Cleveland State has been good to me, I mean it. I grew up on that campus, but had a great time also at Case Western Reserve University.
So we really should be calling you Dr. Williams then, correct?
Well, you don't have to. I do have a name. The one my parents gave me at birth, that was Regennia, and I like that. The guys who studied Latin in high school would tell me, you know, Regennia is Latin for queen, right?
Oh.
Yes, I know that. You know, I like the fact that my mother gave me that name. It's got an interesting spelling of Regennia. It still means queen.
And you're very regal and carry yourself like a queen too.
You're very kind. That makes 2 of us, Soror. Thank you for your kind words.
Absolutely. So what made you stay in Cleveland? Why Cleveland?
Well, again, as I said, I was engaged to be married, and I got married and started my family before I earned the first degree. So once I was on the mommy track, you know, it took a while to get that first degree. It took about 9 years to get a 4-year degree. You know, went immediately to grad school to get the master's degree. When I finished that master's in the Levin College of Urban Affairs, went back up the road to Case Western Reserve University. That's actually where I wanted to go straight out of high school, but finances being what they were and me planning to get married at 17, I needed money for something else, like the rent. So I was an interesting teenager. You know, I'm laughing now, but it's been a journey. But, you know, we thank God for family. You know, you tell your parents you're going to do that, and okay, get your education, get a job, pay your rent. You know, they're okay with that. But finally said I do when I was 19, and within a year became a mother. And so it was interesting, you know, juggling all of those various responsibilities. But in Cleveland, you can do that because there's so many amazing post-secondary institutions here. Cleveland State was a commuter campus, so you could have a family and have a job, you know, and go to class, you know, and if you get lucky, you get a job on campus, right? You can consolidate things a bit and manage the time perhaps a little easier in doing that, but I enjoyed every minute of it. I'm grateful for every trial, you know, every lesson that I learned. Cleveland is a wonderful place, I think, to be in the world.
Now, you've also had the opportunity to lecture around the world as well, correct?
Yes.
And what have some of those experiences taught you about the world and life?
Well, you know, as a student, I had a chance to go to Canada on more than one occasion. Once as a Girl Scout, you know, when I was still, before I graduated from high school, you know, that K through 12 level, you know, you're impressionable. But if you get a chance to go someplace away from home and the travel bug bites you, you know, you just don't lose that desire to see things that are a little bit further away from that place that you've been calling home for maybe 18, 20, 25 years. And so as far as the lecturing is concerned, I've had a chance to lecture in Beijing, China, and Macau, China. I had a Fulbright fellowship, my first one in 2010. I was in Ile-Ife, Nigeria, Yoruba land. Amazing, just amazing for an entire semester. And again, just everything that I thought I knew about Yoruba culture, I learned in art history classes. But to be able to say, and now I'm the teacher, you know, I have this PhD, I worked very hard, it took me a long time. And then you can go back to Africa and teach the history of Africans in the diaspora and focus on the United States. So, validation, I know for those of us who call ourselves African Americans, to know that there are Africans who think of us that way, and to suggest that the ties still bind us, you know, despite the fact that there's this ocean, you know, between the two continents, North America and Africa, there are still cultural ties that bind African Americans to those Africans of the soil, like the Nigerians. So that was really a wonderfully eye-opening experience and life-changing as well. And my second Fulbright was also on the continent of Africa, more recent. That was in 2019, and that was in South Africa, in the Free State. Yeah, and with Zulu and Sutu and Xhosa people, but just amazing. You know, in an area where there's this beautiful mountain range, Kwakwa campus in South Africa, University of the Free State. So, and again, to teach oral history, but to teach the students to not just listen to my voice as the lecturer, the guest scholar from the United States. And they made me feel like I was such a big deal, if not the queen. Certainly.
Well, your name is Regennia.
A knowledgeable an academician, right? And the students were so amazing. Now, no, you have to listen to your own voice. Well, find your voice, speak your mind, and then conduct oral histories in this community, within the context of your own culture, maybe in your mother tongue, you know, because every experience that you have, I think in this part of the world, is informed by the culture that produced you, that nurtured you, that got you to this point in your life, and they seem to like that. And so I was very proud of them. I'm hoping that when the world reopens on the other side of COVID, perhaps I'll have another opportunity to go back to South Africa and to visit some of the amazing students and faculty colleagues that I interacted with in Asia and also in other parts of Africa.
Okay. And what does the garden mean to you? What does African American Cultural Gardens mean to you?
You know, I just think, again, Cleveland, a beautiful place to be in the world. That garden is an amazing place to be in the world. What I like most about the upper part of the garden, if I can say it that way, is that the past, the first phase of the garden, is right there in the neighborhood. So for example, if people are like me and they don't like to drive or they don't own a car, right, they can get on I believe that's the St. Clair bus that drops you off at the top of the hill, and then you take a very pleasant walk, you know, and then you're right there at the garden. But I also like the fact that there are houses, you know, just across the street from that portal. That's such an important landmark as far as the garden is concerned. And so I feel like it's right there in the neighborhood, and that people can engage, you know, with that cultural element that reminds us of our African past. And if they want, they can take a walk down the hill. This is a beautiful grassy hill, you know, and then they're right there on the boulevard where the cars are, you know, it is pedestrian friendly. Let me say that of the garden.
Running
Stay on the,
trail, all that stuff.
yeah, but stay on the sidewalk. You know, don't try to cross the boulevard, but just beautiful, you know, with the trees and well maintained, and the flowers are there. In many ways, it reminds me of the space that we're in here at the Western Reserve Historical Society. It suggests to me that people care. For many years, I shared with a board member, Levita Ewing, right, that I used to hear those discussions where people would say, it's a shame with all the Black people in this city that there is no Black cultural garden. Why is it that we can't get ourselves together and get this garden in place? But I'm so grateful for the work of Dr. Booker T. Tall in the past, and others of his generation who worked with him to establish the garden, and certainly for the leadership of Carl and Levita Ewing and what they're doing in our time to keep it going. You know, looking forward to the building of phase 2, to talk about that movement culturally from Africa to the Americas and getting us to this present moment, and then beyond that to phase 3, you know, to envision a bright future, culturally speaking, for African Americans, and have it all represented right there in that same beautiful space. That's what the garden means for me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I want to thank you so much for your time today and the most enjoyable interview. You're so informative, and you said a lot of wonderful things and a lot for people to think about as well. So just want to thank you so much for your time today. And this is Rachel Hill with the African American Cultural Gardens Sankofa web series. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned.
Hello, I'm Carl Ewing, the president of the Association of African American Cultural Gardens. We need your help to complete the African American Cultural Gardens. We learn from our past as we live in the present to secure our future. That's what the African American Cultural Gardens represent, the African American experience. To make your tax-deductible donations, go to AAACG.org. Remember, sow a seed and watch us grow. Thank you.
We're excited to bring you Sankofa Series, Do You Know, where we highlight an individual who has impacted the community and the world for the betterment of society, to see if you know them. This individual is an author, a social activist, and an educator. He is the president of the Harlem Children's Zone, an organization that states its mission is to increase both high school and college graduation rates from students in Harlem, New York. If you guessed Jeffrey, Canada, then you do know